The paper spiel goes along the lines as investors, everybody's trying to get an ROI. So the easiest way to get an ROI is to buy something full price and sell it at high interest.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. We have a great episode ahead of us. But before we dive into that, Dan, how are you doing out west?
Pretty good. Enjoying the weather. Having some troubles at one of my rentals, but such is life when you own real estate.
That is, the pros of being in land is you deal less with toilets, which I think is what your problem is constant toilet issues.
Yes, water pouring through the ceiling at a rental house, but, this is why depreciation, I think, makes up for it. Anyways, want to tell everybody about today's guest?
Yeah, absolutely. We have Daniel Martinez on the show today, and we spent a majority of the episode breaking down his multi-seven-figure operation that he has going, in which he is primarily doing large subdivides down in Texas. Daniel and his partner Anthony actually founded a CRM and mastermind group called The Hive in 2021, and they offer CRM services, various coaching and consulting services as well that has greatly fed the pipeline of their actual business. But it's a huge operation he's running, and we got the chance to break down Daniel's business, so let's bring him in.
All right, Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So Mason and I haven't gotten to interview a fellow land investor for quite a while. So we'd love to just get into your business, what you're doing, what you and Anthony do every day. So can you tell us a little bit about what your business actually looks like? Are you flipping infill lots, doing large subdivides, new construction? Kind of dive into that a bit.
We switched about a year and a half ago to large subdivides. So we've taken a lot of bigger projects. We probably have 4 or 5 bigger projects, $500,000 plus, up to $3 million. We're still doing it, though that money's a little bit slower money, so we're trying to increase the input from smaller deals. So just to kind of get the cash flow in, because the business, it can be very cash flow intensive, depending on your expenses. But it's been very interesting. We've been doing this for a very long time. When I show the numbers we do, I always put the caveat that we've been doing this for 6 years. So don't think you're going to get to year 1 or year 2.
Absolutely. So with these subdivides, are these deals you're finding on the market and all the value is added via the, breaking them up into smaller lots? Are these you're going direct to seller, buying at a discount as is, and then adding further value with the subdivide? Kind of dig into that a bit more as to what the strategy looks like and then the size and use of the parcels.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a lot. I want to say we're doing 3 subdivides at the moment that are over 100 acres, and possibly a 4th coming soon. We just picked up one last week, but they're essentially, one was off market from a wholesaler, the other one was on market on the MLS, and then the other one was on market on MLS. So we pick up a lot of stuff off the MLS right now, but we do work with wholesalers as well. That's where a lot of our lead flow comes from.
That makes sense. And Daniel, I want to, maybe look high level and then start zooming into the individual components and kind of breaking down these deals, deals by deal, where sounds like we operate similar businesses where you've got a lot more of the, bigger, longer turnaround time deals, which there's a balance to it, just like you kind of alluded to. This business is great, but the cash flow is like a sine wave, where if you're not doing, either smaller deals or you have income coming in from, either some sort of sales and, coaching or consulting or, your CRM that we can talk about a little bit as well, it can get stressful. It's like, well, I've got all this projected revenue. I've got 4.5 million in projected revenue in 14 months. It'll come in. So let's maybe talk a little bit about the mindset kind of around how you guys are able to keep doing what you need to do on a daily basis, knowing that you might not have large chunks of revenue coming in on a consistent, weekly or monthly basis.
The trick to that is raise money. You raise money to keep buying. That's the best advice I can give you. There's definitely when you switch to doing a larger transaction, there's like a stale period. Just to build up that pipeline when you pivot. So it can get very heavy to carry that cash flow burden, whether you got personally your employees. Pretty much everything that comes with that, it gets pretty heavy. So you always have to make sure you got plenty of opportunities. You have some cash burn to carry that through that drought period, and it's just managing the capital you have coming in. But man, a lot of these days I'm just raising money. I'm not looking at deals. I have an acquisitions person looking at the deals, doing all the paperwork on the back end. Right now I mostly raise money and I teach. Is where I'm at right now.
That's great. And I feel like that's kind of where most operators end up kind of moving towards, depending on what they're the best at, of the personable, outgoing, external facing, that can convince people to trust them and raise money. You end up finding yourself in that role a lot of the times. And then the other point, I wanted to kind of double down on is you need to have that metric in your back pocket, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but whenever you have a P&L, days cash on hand is something that you need to be thinking about whenever you're looking at your P&L and your balance sheet of what's your run rate for all of your operating expenses, employee marketing, advertising, everything else that you're spending money on. And if you don't get a single dime in the door for the next 90 days, is that what it is, or the next 180 days? But Daniel, let's talk a little bit about the deal structure. And one of our favorite things about this podcast is Dan and I love interviewing people that are in similar businesses, so we can selfishly get consulting while we're on the podcast. So Dan and I have a fund that we're raising capital through. We've both done several $1 million in capital raises within our own businesses through both debt and equity structuring. So with one of these large subdivide deals, what does the overall, cap stack look like, as well as how are you guys getting paid? How are your investors getting paid? Everything.
Yeah, absolutely. For everybody here listening, if you want to get free consulting, start a podcast. That's it for you.
Right.
So the capital stack for us is generally a little different. We use a lot of private capital. We're not institutional per se, but we have a lot of private capital. So our private capital and the way we take down deals is very specific for a reason, because we're always trying to leverage that capital. There's a lot of land investors that they buy for cash and sell for cash, and that's all they do. And they'll find a good deal and they'll just buy it. Generally, the bigger the deal, the more creative we want to get, just because we want amplification of capital. So for instance, we got a deal about maybe 60 days ago. It's 160 acres for $885, and we have an extended escrow for $50K non-refundable art. With surveys and EMD, we'll probably put another $50K in clearing. So we're into this deal maybe $100K, and we're trying to profit $500 to $700 on it. So we have a 5 to 7x ROI.
Hell yeah!
And we can give our investors a really good return because we are leveraging that capital in not necessarily, it's not a safe position because we don't own the property, but it's a good ROI multiple on the capital required to do the transaction. And that's generally what we like to do. Yes, we could buy it for $800 and sell it for 1.5, but then you're down to 50% ROI. They have to split with investors. So we like doing it the other way, where we leverage private capital that's maybe a little bit more expensive, that we'll charge out the deal that way to get a multiple 100% ROI.
Interesting. So I would love to dive into that deal. A couple questions. What part of the country are we talking in? You don't have to give specifics if you don't want, but where approximately?
Texas.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
90% of our transactions are in Texas. We're actually closing a deal in Florida this week, but that's few and far between. But 90% of our deals are in Texas.
I thought so. And actually, we've talked to a number of Texas guys recently. It's such a big state with so much land and so many people moving there. There's endless opportunity. So, all right, the way that you're structuring that, is this in effect a scenario where you're getting some sort of improvement, an allowance, working the entitlements, and then just selling it to an end user while you have an option on it? Or what is the actual methodology where you're not closing?
We just ask for extended escrow. So we'll go to a seller. Like the seller's motivation is they want a 1031 before the end of the year. So we ask for set it escrow. Land is the only asset class you can pay the seller off with their own property. Hypothetically, you can't buy a 50-unit apartment complex and cut off 5 and use it as down payment. You can't do that, but you can in land. I can hypothetically buy 100 acres, and if I get that thing sold at finance 20% down, I could sell 20 acres and use it as a down payment.
Interesting.
Very plausible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's creative. And then with the investors funding these projects, I know you mentioned a little higher risk, higher return. Do you set it up, because this is where I see people get in trouble, do you set it up where they don't get anything until you exit and all the profit comes in, or is there a debt service along the way, or what does that look like? How do you hedge risk there?
We do a couple of different things. It depends on the lender. We have lenders that we're working with for over 2 years, and they made a lot of money with us. So they're definitely have a lot of trust in us. So they're okay with the risk position because they've already seen a lot of success and made a lot of money with us. So they're a little bit battle tested, should I say? They're a little battle tested. So they're a little bit more open to a lot of crazy stuff that we do, and we're definitely a little bit crazy. Like I said, we locked up this deal. We got really great terms instead of the escrow just because we went $50,000 hard. There's no investors I know of that drops EMD hard on transactions like we do, and that's just because we know what we can and can't do with the property, and we're really confident in our timelines when we can exit. So as far as timelines, we usually pay the investor back first. So usually it goes seller, investor, and then we're usually paid last. We do pay our sales team interim upon sales, just so they can keep selling. But it usually goes in that order. So it's usually the seller, the investor, and then our ROIs on the tail end.
That makes sense. On that, though, do you ever charge a management fee at the front end to investors or anything like that?
No.
So I see that on your website, it looks like you guys are either have or are starting a debt fund. Has that happened yet? And can you tell us a little bit about where you're at with that process?
We have our big investors. They do want to invest in a fund with us, but they kind of told us that they like the appetite of syndications. So we've been kind of syndicating as we go. Our goal is to eventually in the future to create like a note buying fund, possibly. But as of right now, everything our investors they want to invest like 10, 20 million, but through syndication. And that's just one of our investors. I actually had a call with another one. They want to go another 10 million. So potentially we can go 30 million in the paint without ever doing the fund.
And I think there is something to it of just getting experience running and operating a fund and everything of, we talked to our friend Justin Sleva. I don't know if you know Justin, who also went through the experience of managing a fund and operating it and having to deal with the SEC and everything, where there are the pros and cons of it, of rather than having to play matchmaker of, okay, I know that, Daniel can invest $4 million into deals that is like this, and, this person that can do that, you can kind of pool it together and create like a REIT, essentially, depending on the model of the fund and everything. But I guess, let's deep dive into one of these deals. We've kind of gone through some of the structure that you do with, potentially buying on terms and having a longer escrow period to be able to split them up. What the last deal that you had full cycle, can you start at the very beginning? And then, Dan and I will jump in with some questions as you're explaining it, from where the lead came from, how much you purchased it for, what the total sale price was, what the timeline was, what improvements, if any, beyond, entitlement or lot subdivision, should you do horizontal work too?
I have a lot of deals in mid-cycle. Some we paid off investors that we were in the middle of. Like I said, I've got tons and tons of subdivides. The one that just went full cycle was kind of funny. We picked up a four lot in Bastrop for $408, 18 acres. We sold 3 lots immediately for $637 in 3 weeks. Once we literally bought it, we contracted it and sold it in 3 weeks, and then we just sold the 4th lot for $180. So it was like 407 purchase, 818 sold. But the thing is that we bought this deal in November. We sold the 3 lots in December. We just sold the last lot, which was our profit last week. It was like 2 weeks ago. And we kind of held on to the lot because you can't see it as a piggy bank, you know? Like, I have this lot free and clear, and I can sit on it for a while. So we sat on it for a while, and we kind of cashed out. So we had profit in that deal since December of last year, but we finally cashed out of it a few weeks ago. But it was a 4 in, 4 out.
It's a great feeling whenever you no longer have any debt service or investor obligation or anything, and you're like, oh man, like I actually made money. I do make money in this business. It's not just made up sometimes. But Daniel, where did that deal come from? How did you guys actually get those 4 lots in Bastrop?
That was from a wholesaler. We get a lot of deals from wholesalers and from the MLS. Now, one thing I'll say too is that's probably been the biggest ROI as far as like percentage quickly. So I think we had like a 600% return in 3 weeks, annualized. So it was really crazy. But what was I going to mention? Yeah, there's so much money in land, and like I said, that's what I was going to mention. Debt service. You mentioned debt service. I was trying to backtrack a little bit in my mind. Sorry about that. So you mentioned debt service. All of our lenders that we try and work with have no debt service. They put in the money and then charge them out at the end. A lot of investors, they want monthly payments, and I'd rather just pay more ROI than deal with monthly payments because this business is crazy. Like we're not in the rental business where we have cash flow. So I try and avoid payments on our cash as much as possible, and I'm willing to pay for it in a lot of different ways.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm in the rental business, and some mornings you wake up with water pouring through the ceiling of one of your rentals, as I did this morning. So that's cash flow in that business also can be not so great. So continuing along that, yeah, but along that deal, Daniel, so came from a wholesaler. Did you bought it for cash, financed it via your investors? Now, in that case, did you split it into 4, or you're saying it already was 4? Was there any value add, or is this purely you bought it at a huge discount and sold it at retail in 4 pieces?
So that is a great question. The truth is that it was already cut up. Okay. It was it was already done, and we just did our thing. The cool thing about land is that you can, and for everybody here listening, if you target multiple parcel lots, you can do 7 figures a year pretty easily just by doing that. Because a lot of people, they don't see the value of it. They see it as one. So if they have 100 acres, they see it as 100 acres. But it might be more 25-acre lots. You're in the money every time, mostly. And a lot of agents don't understand that. So there's a lot of agents that list stuff on MLS that it's 50 acres, but it could be 5 or 6 lots, and they just list it as 50 acres. So there's a lot of arbitrage and pre-cut up stuff that's already cut up, that if you just target that, you're going to be in the money for a long time. For us, we do a little bit of both. We kind of keep an eye out for stuff that's cut up already and stuff that has potentially to get cut up. And that's really where we make a lot of money.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, that wholesaler, don't let him hear what you sold it for. That's crazy.
I hope he doesn't listen to this because he's going to be mad.
Yeah. Okay, so sometimes you do buy for cash. Sometimes that you leverage with creative structures. So that makes sense.
That one was so ridiculous. We had to buy it cash, and we had to buy it quick, and there was no questioning about it. And we already had buyers in the area too, so it was a no-brainer to buy it for cash. But generally, the bigger the property, we're trying to do something creative.
Yeah. Okay. And then kind of the last section of that deal, you said you already had buyers in the area. So do you all have the dispo side of the business built out? You're not relying on realtors, or is it a mix? What does that look like?
We have an internal sales team that are agents and wholesalers that sell our properties. We leverage our education side for this, where we teach students how to sell properties, and that's kind of our internal sales team. But we have a big sales team, and we don't necessarily count on agents because most agents are terrible.
Sure. Daniel, so how do you specifically target these deals that are already split up? Is it through MLS searches of, I've done and heard, portfolio takedown. I've done and heard, minor subdivisions and, large lot splits or even, major subdivisions. But how do you specifically find these ones where it's like, yeah, 50 acres for sale, 5 10-acre lots? Is that through a software, or is it through just your acquisitions team scrubbing the MLS and finding who's poorly listed the property?
The honest answer is that every deal that comes in, we look at the address and see how many parcels it is. And that's just the answer, is that every deal that comes in, we're looking. First thing we look at is how many parcels it's, because if it's, I don't care if it's 5 acres or 30 acres, I want to see how many parcels it is. That's the first thing I look at.
So I guess specify for us, or for me. So you're saying 123 Main Street, it's going to have 4 or 5 APNs tied to that one address, or is it lot 6, lot 7, lot 8, lot 9, lot 10 on block whatever?
It might be both. So sometimes especially with land, we don't have addresses. So generally I ask the wholesaler, where's the nearest address? So once I get the nearest address, I ask them how many acres it is total, and then I look at the parcels. So sometimes it's like, it's 25 acres. And I look it up and it's 3 lots. I'm like, okay, this is a good one.
Yeah. No, that's great. I don't think I'd actually encountered that. Is this something that happens a lot more in Texas than potentially other states, where a single address or, one deal that's submitted has those multiple APNs tied to it? I guess that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
So for instance, I'm buying a deal from a wholesaler probably next week. It was like 6 acres. I'll pull up the 6 acres and it's 3 lots. And I'm like, okay, I could sell one of these for the price you're asking. It's a deal.
I mean, that's a way to do it. I guess, no, I think that makes sense. And I do think that's something too, where, I've gotten a decent amount of properties under contract recently where my acquisitions guys or myself are going out and just looking at the most poorly listed properties on the MLS and just making lowball offers, to see if we can make something happen, and just attempting to really focus on, hey, it's already split up, or if it's in an area where it's very, very easy to do minor subdivision as an additional tool you can have in your tool belt in this business.
Yeah, with MLS, I make full price offers. I don't lowball anybody.
Interesting. Yeah, well, if there's enough value add or something that they're not seeing, that makes sense. And it happens so frequently with land, where a family will have something or an old ranch they want to sell, and they just hire the realtor they would have used to sell their house, who doesn't know anything about land, and there's a big value add that nobody's really aware of because it's just a more inefficient market.
I have a deal just like that. They hired their cousin who's an agent. So the cousin's the house agent. They listed it 30 acres on the MLS. We picked it up. We sold 16. We bought 38 acres for $285. We're closing on it, I think, at the end of the month. It's very close. But we're buying 38 acres for $285, which is what it's worth. But once you cut it up, it had plenty of frontage. We sold 16 acres for $190 already. And then we have 2 11-acre lots for $165. So there's like $200 profit out this deal.
Perfect. Yeah, you got me thinking too. I've got a couple in Florida under contract, 35.4 acres and one like 5-acre piece, and they're both a conglomeration of multiple APNs. So I'll have to double check. I mean, they're deals as is, but I'll have to double check that. So you've got my mind going there a bit.
Absolutely.
But all right, so you've mentioned your team quite a bit and kind of your role, and you mentioned you had the sales team, wholesalers, brokers. Or realtors? Can you kind of break down your team? And let's start with that. Can you break down who all is on the team?
I have a lot of people. There's a lot of people. I have a couple VAs. I have a couple VAs to help out on the software side, which is like CRM management for our internal team as well. I have editors that edit the podcast. I have graphics people that make graphics for all of our stuff. I have a full-time graphics person that makes stuff for our podcast and for the real estate side. And then on acquisitions, I have one main guy, and then me and Anthony kind of partake a little bit. And then on sales, I have like 30 people, because I don't necessarily need a lot of help on acquisitions, because picking up deals is pretty easy for us. It's usually sales that is a struggle. So we have a big sales team that push a lot of properties. I think we had like 4 closings last week. That was pretty crazy. So there's a lot of action going on between the sales team, and it's just because we create inventory. I'll buy one lot, and then I'll tell it. for instance, I'm picking up one lot and I'm selling it into 13 lots. So I need a lot more salespeople than I do acquisition.
So that's a decent sized team, both, it seems like contractors and full-time people. Let's get into the numbers a little bit of your business, Daniel. What is your typical run rate in terms of just operating expense on a monthly basis, both, salaries, wages, and benefits, as well as marketing, software, that kind of stuff?
Right now, it's probably like $50,000 a month.
Okay.
And it's probably it should be a lot more, but it's pretty cheap, considering the operation we run. But yeah, it's a lot.
That right there is it's a decent spend for sure. But talking about the numbers that you guys are bringing in, that's a relatively low cost in general. So at a high level on a typical year, we're coming to, closing in on the end of Q3 of 2024. What are you guys anticipating, gross revenue coming in?
Ooh, that's a hard question. That's a really hard question. And the reason why is I have a $10 million project that could be ready to sell in October, and we're already getting pre-sales on it. So if we get the approval for that, we might do a lot of revenue.
Oh yeah.
Potentially. And literally right now, we probably have, our pipeline is like 20 million right now. Wow. Of current deals that we need to sell, or they're in process to sell, or in some way, shape, or form. So there's a lot going on. And 20 million is probably low, because literally that $10 million project, we're selling 100 lots for 100,000. So that's 18 million right there. Wow. Just on one project.
Oh yeah. No, and I think, going back to what we were talking about before, that's one of the difficulties in this business is, it's almost accounts receivable of what's listed on the market and what's anticipated to sell. And, attempting to do accurate projections with your financials can be difficult, because it's like, I don't know, I might have a $5 million month, or I might have a $0 month, depending on, when, closings are, when things like that happen. But I guess, so this year is a little complex, but looking back at 2023, do you know what your EBITDA was for the year, or your net?
I think last year we probably did like 2 million.
That's fantastic.
And yeah, we probably did like 2 million, but it was crazy because this year we did like 1.5 million in January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
Which almost can be attributed to the 2023 work and everything.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. Like we had $2 million months this year, and we had $1 million week in January. Like, it was crazy this year. I'm trying, like I said, November, December, and I'm hoping we can do another $1 million months, because like I said, with our project size and our potential deals we have, like I said, it's not, I think we can probably do another 2 more by the end of the year out of the 4 months we got left.
Well, and based on your run rate of what your expenses are, it seems like you're making, give or take, in between $3 and $5 for every single dollar you spend across the board, which is a fantastic return on investment and operating margins that are, not seen very often, whether it's in this business or in any business at all. So how do you balance that, where it's easy to allow ghost expenses to creep up in this business, or to get fat as an organization, because you're like, dude, I make a 600% cash on cash return on all the deals that I'm doing. How do you attempt to stay as lean as you can as an organization?
We try and keep everybody as contractors as much as we can, and it's not to minimize them. It's just to you eat what you kill type model. So if they don't produce, they don't produce, and it is what it is. So we have the ability to cycle out non-producers, and I hope that's not offensive to my team, but it's an easy way to keep people that are producing on board, and you're not having to carry everybody, and that could be painful alone in itself, especially if you have a high cash business. It's easy to get fat.
Yeah. So what does the incentive structure look like for those contractors to keep them happy if they're really producing?
Yeah, we do. We usually pay more than agent commissions. So we're doing like 3% base and then plus bonuses. And then sometimes we'll do like a sales bonus if they do multiple lots in a certain time period. So that they get 3% commission. And then we also give them like other not necessarily advancements, but whereas like a regular agent, they have to use their own resources to kind of sell to make their commission. We'll give them resources, whether it's CRM products and ad capital to push sales. So we give them a lot more incentive, so they're almost paid to sell.
Yep. Interesting. Okay. I think we're coming up to the 30-minute mark here, so we want to pivot to talk about your CRM, but just kind of one thing that's funny is just like with many of the other guys we've interviewed who have bigger businesses than Mason or I, it's so simple. It's just a matter of consistent execution over years and years, because that's quite the operation you have, but it's not especially complex. It's just, that doesn't mean it's easy. So anyways, it's always fun to kind of look under the hood of larger operations like yours. So pivoting to the CRM, Hivemind, is it? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Hivemind was our initial product into the marketplace. We started doing land first. I try not to push Hivemind very much anymore. It's a white label of GHL, and it is what it is. We kind of entry into the marketplace to do that, but we still offer it. I'd rather have less customers these days than more, so I really don't push it very often. I'd more use it internally for our students and our team to get more deals, and that's about it. Servicing other clients isn't necessarily our business model anymore as it used to be, but those are interested in the marketplace, and that's kind of our brand that we've kind of pushed and kind of forced our way into the marketplace. So I don't regret it. It was just a tool that we can use to make more business and make more money with. So it is what it is.
Sure. If it makes your and your students' businesses better and your students are bringing you deals, then ultimately that's just, there's synergy there. So tell us about the education side of things and what all you're doing and kind of how that feeds into your land business, and just lay out the ecosystem.
Yeah. So I have entry-level courses. I have a $1 course, kind of introduces the land game to people if they're interested or intrigued about it. I charge $1 for it because I want them to pull out their wallet. I want them to put some skin in the game, even though it's better than free. And I get their information. Then from there, I have a $100 or $250 course that it's kind of a little bit more advanced into land. And then from there, beyond that, I do weekly calls. So I have a subscription with weekly calls every Tuesday that I'm pushing out, that we kind of go over a lot of what we're currently dealing with. Usually a lot of the calls we kind of cover what happened last week, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talk about ways to target. We talk about different real estate niches, creative finance. I mean, we talk about a lot of different things of what to offer, good terms to ask for, all that jazz. And then my acquisitions guy, he's just started doing a training recently for people that kind of have a brighter star than others. He started doing trainings for them once a week as well.
That's great. And Daniel, what do you feel like the purpose behind the creating of the education, platform was? Is it just extra income generating activity, or is it, feeding your business for larger deals that your students can't take down yourself? A little bit of everything.
Well, my theory on education is, I think a lot of people, they try to put the cart before the horse, and they're trying to extract money out of people that don't have it. There's a lot of people that want to learn the game, but don't have the capital to learn the game. So we try to flip it on its head, where the barrier to entry is very minimal. And I'd rather do one deal with each one of my students over the next 2-3 years than charge them $5,000.
Absolutely.
And it's been paying off. We had a student last year. He probably sent us close to $3 million in deals this year. One student, and he joined us last October. So it's been under a year, and he's brought us $3 million. I have another student that he brought us that $850,000 deal, $885,000. He brought us that deal. We just contracted a deal last week. It's 100 acres for $1 million. Another student that brought us another $1 million transaction, and he's only given us like $200 up front.
That
So do you want the $5,000, $10,000 upfront money, or do you want potentially 6 figures on a transaction?
I think that right there is so crucial for anyone that's either in the education space or looking for education surrounding whatever niche or side hustle it is. Of, I heard a story of a guy that owns a painting business here in Colorado Springs, where I'm located. That he took a course that said double your painting business, and that's exactly what happened. But a majority of people that are taking these courses or enrolling in these programs end up not doing anything, which is where the integrity of the educator comes in. Of, for the person that can't afford $5,000 a month on marketing, they shouldn't be spending $5,000 to take a course on spending $5,000 a month on marketing. And just like Daniel's saying, of being able to have a higher lifetime value of a customer is so much more important, and they're going to make more money and you're going to make more money. Of it's essentially you are outsourcing your acquisitions by teaching people how to do it, because you know that they might not have the investor connections that you have. Of, hey, bring us deals and we'll fund them and we'll partner on them, or we'll just pay you out a wholesale fee. I think that's a really cool model that you guys have seemingly done a really great job creating.
Absolutely. Like I said, we paid a couple $100,000 sign-up fees. I paid a podcast guest who interviewed me. Yeah, he kind of went through this whole debacle thing, and he sent me a deal. We paid him $50,000 for a deal. We're actually paying our biggest assignment fee, hopefully this week, for $115K.
Wow.
Like, I don't know anybody else paying 6-figure assignment fees, but I do it because I want them to bring me another deal. A lot of people, they try and undercut their wholesalers because they want to make all the profit. If you have big enough deals with big enough margin, pay your wholesalers, because they'll bring you another one and you can do another deal with them. Whereas if you really stick it to them, they'll never do a deal with you ever again. Mm-hmm. You cut off a lead source. And then the one thing about land is there's so much opportunity out there that I'll never find every deal out there that could exist. It's impossible. So if I can get a lead or a wholesaler feeding me 1% of that, and I got 100 wholesalers out there feeding me 1% of whatever they got, I mean, that's where you're in the money for a very long time without zero marketing spend. We haven't marketed to sellers directly in over 18 months, where a lot of people, they have that, especially at my size, they're spending $10,000, $15,000 a month in mailers. I haven't spent money on mailers ever.
Mm-hmm.
So I count my education side as an investment in my marketing.
Yeah.
And it's a better place to put it, in my opinion, because you're investing in people. I think people deserve all the opportunities that they can produce, because they're the ones that if you see more light in them than they ever see in themselves, it gives them more potential to grow. And I like the investment in people more than the investment into the market itself.
Yeah. No, I mean, it absolutely makes sense. It's the outsourcing of your acquisitions and marketing department, because there's, especially if, Daniel, it seems like you're mostly doing deals in Texas. You mentioned that one in Florida. Being able to give specific criteria gives the people, one, alignment of incentives with you because you've helped teach them, the space and everything. But two, it gives them the alleviation of the fear of not being able to exit on a deal. Of, I already know who my buyer is. Just like you have the sales department for whenever you do these value add projects, okay, I'm going to be able to sell it to this person, that person. And then, we'll have 1 or 2 lots, which will just be the back end 100% profit, no obligation to anyone, types of deals. But, for Dan and myself, we do a little bit more nationwide, business, and there's no way we could ever learn all of these markets to the level that some of these people that have that level of specificity can. So, we're doing deals in Alabama. Never would have thought to do deals in Alabama until we started funding deals in Alabama. So it's a really cool ecosystem that you're working on creating, and that you have created here. Yeah,
I'm open to doing deals in other markets right now. Our capital resources are growing, so I'm trying to put my ear to the ground as far as hypothetically to try and keep an eye out for opportunities. Which, why would you do that Florida deal? I'm looking at a deal in Colorado right now. I'm looking at in Tennessee. So I'm open to doing other states. It's just, it has to make sense, and it has to fit like that minimum barrier to entry, where it's plain black and white that I can make money on this deal, and I'll do those deals too. Because there's deals out there that are plain black and white. Like you can look at that and like, hey, it's buy for 50,000, sell for 100 plus. Like it's a no brainer. You can see that plainly, especially with the experience we have. So there's plenty of opportunity out there. So I think we're opening up our opportunity. But man, Texas is bread and butter, and we know it like the back of our hand. We had a student that no money. She's a single mom. She's like, I found this deal. So like it was a good deal. So we bought it. And then she's like, can I help sell it too? I'm like, absolutely. So we kind of let her, she's using us as like the buyer and holder of it. And then she pretty much bought it and she's selling it too. So like she's working the whole thing of it. And it's like a $65,000 deal, which is a lot for a lot of people. But for us, I mean, it's one of those things where there's potential there for money. And like I said, if she wants to sell it, she can sell it. So we give a lot of opportunity to our students in a lot of different ways to grow and to learn this business from scratch without necessarily the resources that we didn't have when we started. So it definitely gives them a leg up, because when we started this, man, it's hard to raise money in land, and we try and give that benefit to our students. That if you find this thing that looks like this, we will buy it and we will fund it.
Sure. Yeah, that's a really synergistic relationship you've created there, and incentives are all more aligned, I think, the way you've structured that. So I like that. It's almost functionally kind of like a franchise model, kind of. So anyways, all that to say, something we always like to ask other business owners, especially in land where we can't depreciate the land, anything that you're doing with all these profits as far as investment? I mean, cost segregation has helped me out a lot on taxes, but I think you mentioned you're not doing rentals. So what does that side look like for you if you're even doing anything there?
We're trying to diversify into notes ourselves. I don't necessarily want to hold assets. I'd rather hold the paper on a lot of stuff. We're getting to I don't have any urge to own doors unless I need the depreciation. So a lot of our strategies probably go to the debt side of things. So we do create a lot of paper. So it's one of those things where we have plenty of it, and it's backed by good real estate.
Yeah, gosh, we'll have to have you back on and do a whole show on that side of things, because it's just not talked about. You can go and get great land deals just by buying the notes. Of course, there's been less distress, especially 2, 3, 4 years ago, because there's so much money flowing into the system. But I imagine it seems we're returning to some level of normalcy where there will be distress. So yeah, that's interesting. That's an even more not well understood asset type, really.
Yeah, that's literally our biggest. You wouldn't even talk about it, but it's one of our biggest strategies in the land game is financing. There's no bank financing out there, so we provide it to our buyers to sell our property faster.
Yeah. I think, the more you can do to keep it so where you're not keeping a ton of inventory and that your AR starts getting out of control, the better, because, you have to keep your investors happy. And then two, in case you structure deals poorly, you are able to move them before you have any potential debt service or payoff or anything like that. I say that as I'm paying a $400,000 note off this week. So it happens. But anyways, I won't complain about that because Dan hears me complain about it all the time. Daniel, as we move towards the end of the show, and we will ask you about where people can find out more about you, are there any questions that we did not ask you that you wish we had on this show?
You didn't ask me enough about paper, because that's a lot of the game.
Give us the paper spiel in 2 minutes.
The paper spiel goes along the lines of as investors, everybody's trying to get an ROI. So the easiest way to get an ROI is to buy something full price and sell it at high interest. Right? That's what car dealerships do. They have a $50,000 product and they sell it at 18% interest. So that's how you make an ROI pretty easily. So when you got to get into high double-digit returns, fairly easy, even easier than that is you find a deal. So if you can find a deal 70 cents on the dollar and sell it for 100 cents, sell it finance at 12%, you make a 20% yield without doing anything. And that's a long-term 20% yield.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you do that, what does the structure look like with your investors, or are you only doing that with your own cash, or what does your debt look like on that, if there is any?
Well, once you learn how to make high yield, you can figure out ways to pass it on to your investors. So if you can learn how to create high yield consistently over time, 20-30% returns over 10 to 20 years, I mean, you just got to find a way to shortcut that ROI to give it to you back to your investors. And that's just having conversations. So once you understand the power of notes, you have the ability to print whatever you want.
Sure.
And then the other hard part of it is you have to have a value creation to create the notes. And that's where the land game comes in. The land game isn't serviced enough by financing like housing and commercial is. So you have a product that's unserviceable, that's not unserviceable, but it's not serviced enough that you can create this hybrid balance that isn't anywhere else.
Yeah. And thank you for that piece of marketing, because that's what Mason and I have been saying for years, and why we started our land funding venture. Because there's very few capital providers that are knowledgeable on land that you can go to finance deals, even if you have something at 50 cents on the dollar. So very much in agreement there. And it's interesting, you're taking a different angle on kind of solving that problem and profiting off of that problem. So that's interesting. We'll have to talk about that another time. Well, anyways, all that to say, Daniel, this was fun. You have quite the operation. Where can people find out more about you?
We're at Hivemind CRM on all platforms. We have our own podcast called Hive with Us Podcast. Talk about land, real estate, a lot of fun topics. We have a lot of fun there. We have 560 episodes or something like that out right now. Been producing a lot of there. So if you're a binger of information, there's a lot of information out there. But yeah, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, where we produce content where content is consumed. So if you're curious where we're at, we're there. But we enjoy sharing the information on the marketplace, and there's there's not enough information out there when it comes to land and notes. So we like providing and being a resource for that.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on today. We'll link everything in the show notes. Until next time, guys, this is Dan Haberkost and Mason McDonald with the Big Picture Blueprint, signing off.